Hello, boys and girls. It's time for our next story about Jacob and Rachel and Leah and their family. Well, Jacob, remember, he had to work for 14 years for his father-in-law, Laban, in order to marry the woman he loved, who was Rachel. Leah wasn't as beautiful, and sometimes she would be kind of sad because Jacob loved Rachel so much more than he loved Leah. But God blessed Leah with lots of children. She had many, many sons. In fact, she had 10 sons. But Rachel didn't have any children, which was kind of sad. But then finally, God did bless her. We'll hear in our next story about God blessing Rachel finally. But Jacob had a lot of sons. He ended up with 12 sons. And he also had a lot of riches. God blessed him. Remember, God promised he would bless him. And so God blessed Jacob with lots and lots of sheep and camels and goats and everything he did, God blessed. And so what happened is some of Rachel and Leah's brothers started getting jealous of Jacob because Jacob had more sheep than they did. Because Laban would say, all right, I am only going to pay you in spotted sheep, the ones that have spots. And he would think, well, there won't be very many spotted sheep. But guess what? All the sheep that were born were spotted. And then he would change his mind and say, okay, now you're only going to have the ones that have like stripes. And then suddenly all the babies that were born would be stripes because God kept blessing Jacob. So the brothers were getting jealous and they started treating Jacob really meanly. They weren't very nice to him. And then Laban wasn't very nice to him. So one day God told Jacob that it was time for him to move, that he wanted him to go back to Canaan land, the land that he was going to bless him with. So Jacob went to his wives and said, what do you think? God has told me that it's time to move. Would you be willing to do that? And the wives both said, you do whatever God tells you to do. They were willing to move. That was a big thing because it was not easy moving. They didn't have moving vans back then. They would have to load up their camels with all of their belongings, and then they had to pack up things, and they would have to walk. So it was time. And one day, without telling Laban, Rachel and Leah and Jacob packed all of their belongings and all of their children, and they started heading out to leave. And they did not tell Laban. Well, so they headed out, but guess what? After a while, Laban discovered that they were gone. And oh my goodness, he was so upset. And he was going to go stop them and demand that they return. But God spoke to Laban and said not to hurt Jacob. God was going to protect him. But Laban did go, and he found Jacob, and he found all of Jacob's children and family, and he even brought the brothers came, and some of the servants came to stop Jacob. And Jacob told him, God has told us it's time for us to leave, so we are leaving. And then Laban was very upset because somehow some of his gods were missing. And Jacob said, why would you accuse us? We didn't take them, but guess what? His wife Rachel actually did. She actually snuck them, but she hid them, and some of the things that were Laban's. And so, but he didn't find them, and finally it was time for them to go on their way. So once again, they were heading out back to where they came from, to the land where Jacob was from. And of course, Rachel and Leah had never been there before. But what about Esau? Would Esau accept them? Was he going to be still so angry with them, with Jacob? Well, as they were walking, and one night, they stopped for rest. And in the night, when they were sleeping, Jacob kind of got off by himself, and he suddenly started wrestling with somebody. Somebody was wrestling all around with him. And he realized that it was actually God wrestling with him. And Jacob would not let him go because he wanted blessing from God. He wanted to know, was God going to be with him? Was God going to protect him and take care of him? And so it was pretty amazing because he wrestled, and since Jacob would not let him go, God did touch Jacob in the hip, and it kind of hurt it. And then God spoke to Jacob, and he said, Jacob, don't be afraid. I am going to be with you, and I'm going to change your name. Your name is now Israel. So God changed Jacob's name to Israel. And that's why that's the country Israel comes from his name, because all of his sons were the descendants for Israel. And Jacob named this place where he wrestled, he named it Peniel, meaning the grace of God, because he knew he had wrestled with an angel of God and that God changed his name there. So later that day, he reunited with his family and all of his flocks and everything, and it was time to keep going to get home. And what he did is he sent ahead of him and his family, he sent a whole bunch of sheep and some camels and some gifts to give to Esau, in order to hopefully Esau wouldn't be so upset with him. And as they continued walking on, all of a sudden, there were some of the family. And there was Esau. And Esau said, who is all of this with you? Well, who are all these people? And Jacob said, this is my family. These are my children and my wives. And we've come home. And he said, and then Esau said, why did you send me, what are all these sheep that you sent ahead? And Jacob said, they're gifts. I want to give you gifts. God has blessed me with so much. And Esau said, well, I don't need your things. I don't need your gifts. I'm okay. God has given me enough, enough too. But still Jacob said, please take my gifts. And he said, it was kind of a peace offering. He wanted peace with his brother. And so finally Esau did. And then Esau said, let's finish the journey together. And Jacob said, no, we have small children. We are going to travel very, very slowly. And so he didn't want to walk, or he knew that they could not walk as quickly as Esau and his men could. So Esau went on his way. But they were friends. They were friends once again. Things worked out. And Jacob realized he needed to be a peacemaker, and he gave his brother gifts so that there could be peace between them. And thankfully, they now have peace between them. So Esau and Jacob aren't going to be totally fighting all the time. And now Jacob gets to take his family back to the land of Canaan. And now his name is Israel. We'll find more about Jacob and his family next time.